To all you guys who thought that the next advertisement revenue crisis would be on YouTube, you guys were wrong. Patreon's been in the news a lot recently, not for a good reason this time. It's actually because it's been censoring a lot of creators. And I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure that's the exact thing Patreon said they were against. This is actually a pretty serious issue that's been affecting a lot of YouTubers, though, so I'm gonna try to kill the joking tone for a little bit. Because if you don't get advertising revenue from YouTube by itself, pretty much Patreon was your only option, and that's kind of been thrown out the window more or less now. So for my research, this entire controversy started with Sargon of Akkad, probably YouTube's most controversial content creator since Filthy Frank retired. So back in February of 2018, Sargon was on a podcast that had nothing to do with Patreon. He was not connected to Patreon in any way. And he said some pretty strongly worded things that may or may not have included a couple of racial epithets in there.
Look, this is what I mean about the chat. I just can't be bothered to deal with people who treat me like this. It's really annoying. Like, you are acting like a bunch of niggers, just so you know. You act like white niggers. Exactly how you describe black people acting is the impression I get dealing with the alt-right. I'm just not in the mood to deal with this kind of disrespect. And I know it sounds like, oh my God, he's demanding respect. But yeah, to be honest with you, do you not think that, like, we should have a level of decorum in interpersonal interactions? Upper class twat. Dude, I'm not an upper class twat. I come from fucking the most working class roots. At least my parents do. Jesus Christ. It's just like, you understand that I'm a person, don't you? You know, you guys understand that I am a person. And look, yeah, like, sorry, Nisarkeeson, how dare I hurt sensitive feelings? Look, you carry on, but don't expect me to then have a debate with one of your faggots. Maybe you're just acting like a nigger, mate. Have you considered that? Do you think white people act like this? White people are meant to be polite and respectful to one another, and you guys can't even act like white people? It's really, like, amazing to me.
But this podcast, as I said, was recorded in February. He did not get banned from Patreon until December. That's 10 months. So that right there is red flag number one. Red flag number two is that this was a live stream that did not have anything to do with Patreon. And technically, by that clause, it does not violate Patreon's terms of service. Because Patreon's terms of service only applies to actions that occur on the Patreon platform itself, which, like I said, this podcast did not have anything to do with Patreon. But basically what we can observe here is the same kind of thought pattern that led to the ad rev crisis in the first place, is that brands, or in this case Patreon, don't want to be associated with any content that could potentially offend people or marginalize certain groups, thereby making or psychologically associating a negative image with their brand. And while that logic may be flawed in some places, you can see why it would be important to keep negative content away from your brand at all costs in a world like this today. But the main argument that's arisen out of this controversy is whether or not it's okay for Patreon to quote-unquote micromanage their creators. Because, in a sense, for Patreon to ban Sargon based on what appears to be a non-Patreon related at all podcast from 10 months ago, that wasn't even on his channel, by the way, that he was just featured in and he said some negative comments in, makes it seem like Patreon's doing a bit of micromanaging on their creators. And something that me and a lot of other creators are taking away from this is it seems like Patreon is going against their original stance that has allowed them to become so popular amongst YouTubers who have content that could potentially be seen as marginalizing by YouTube and other brands. And that was that Patreon for a long time was seen as a sort of refuge for YouTubers who had content that may not have been seen as suitable for advertisers by YouTube. And that was kind of its main selling point. If they aren't getting ad revenue from YouTube itself, then basically you can leave it up to the fans to directly support the type of content that they want to see. But now it looks like Patreon's going against that original model and turning into YouTube in a way by making sure that their brand comes before the creators that they're trying to help. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with making sure your brand image is something that you would want people to perceive your brand as. I mean, Patreon and YouTube are both privately held companies. They can make whatever decisions they want. But when you start to negatively affect people whose incomes depend on your platform, then that becomes a sort of situation where we need to take a step back and look at how we need to change the system so that people who haven't done anything wrong don't get lumped in unfairly with the people who deserve to have their patronage cut or their YouTube channels deleted or their content demonetized. Because we're living in a world today where jobs are becoming harder to find. I know that's something that the conservative media is probably going to tell you is bullshit, but that's a fact. And yeah, I get why corporations would want to replace certain jobs that are high risk with robots, because with robots you don't have to worry about if they get hurt paying their medical bills. You can just build a new one and reprogram it. Humans are they cost a lot of money to worry about in the place of employment. That's why you have HR representatives everywhere. Humans are a valuable resource. Don't let anyone convince you they aren't. Humans are what make business business. Because it's kind of a thing. Business wouldn't be business if there wasn't profit derived from it. Profit comes from currency, and currency only has power because us humans agree that it has power. Like, if we didn't agree on anything, a $5 bill would just be a piece of paper that was decorated neatly. It wouldn't be able to buy anything. If we didn't agree that that $5 bill was worth something, it would be a useless piece of paper, and we'd probably burn it or use it to make books. So I just thought of a little anecdote that would go along nicely with this entire conversation. But back when I was in first grade, we used to operate on a 3-color system of discipline. Basically, each child had 3 colors assigned to them. It was green, yellow, and red. Every kid started off on green at the beginning of the day. Green meant you did fine. You didn't do anything super bad that day. If you got moved to yellow, though, it meant that you did something. You broke the rules a little bit. You were being a little bit mischievous today. You need to do better tomorrow. But you got moved to red, it meant you did something bad, like really bad. And if you got red, you were basically screwed. But we used to always have the substitute teacher. This is something that happens too. Kindergarten and first grade teachers are often out a lot, and they often have subs a ton. Because, you know, when you're in kindergarten and first grade, I'm not going to say you aren't integral, because kindergarten is really very integral to, you know, a child. Elementary school as a whole is. That's where the foundation started. You can't build up if you don't have that foundation. But kindergarten and first grade teachers, they don't teach, like, it's not necessary for them to be in the classroom. Let me say that. They've got kindergarten and first graders, but what's the worst that a kindergartner and a first grader is going to do if you leave them out of the classroom? Make a mess? Yeah. If you're a high school teacher in a stereotypical public high school today, you leave your class unattended for 5 minutes, someone's going to end up stealing a car. That's just how it works. But you can leave a kindergarten, first grade teacher with somebody and not expect them to be that bad. So we used to always have the substitute teacher that would behave in a way that was personally irking to me. Whenever somebody got in trouble, she would make all of us go down a color. I understand the logic behind that and the motive behind doing that. You would convince people to behave so that their fellow students wouldn't get in trouble for it. But it always made me so mad that she was trying to ingrain this arguably very complex principle into kindergartners and first graders. Because that just didn't make any sense to me. It's basically the idea that's sort of incorporated in a bunch of totalitarian regimes today. You punish the whole for the individual's fault. And, you know, yeah, it in a way promotes positive behavior, but it also promotes a ton of fear, too. Constant fear of breaking the rules, in the essence that everyone's gonna hate you because you got all live in trouble. But she was stupid about it, though. She trusted us to fill out our own, every time you got moved to color, you had to fill out a little sheet. And at the end of the day, you had to color in what color you ended with that day. But she was stupid because she punished us all as a group, but she trusted us to color in our own coloring charts fairly to what was on that board. If I didn't do anything wrong, but I still got my color moved, I filled that sucker in as green. Like, forget you. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't deserve to be punished with the masses. I'm filling that thing in as green. It was YouTube's fault. that the ad revenue crisis started in the first place. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it is definitely YouTube's fault that there were ads running on those videos that brands did not think were suitable in the first place, because their flaggers didn't catch them in time. That's YouTube's fault. But what YouTube did is, because those certain individuals had been uploading videos that YouTube did not deem appropriate, that had gotten ads placed on them, when advertisers started pulling out, they decided to punish everyone, in a sense, by creating the new and improved monetization system, where we get that lovely yellow demonetized symbol. God, that thing is just so infuriating to look at, like the yellow and the white, it just makes you want to scream. So to sum this entire video up, the problem is not with the action itself in banning creators from Patreon. They can do that. They have the right to do that. The problem is the precedent that those actions set. Because now, it's become the normal thing that if Patreon has a creator that they disagree with the behavior of on their platform, they take down their page. That's the precedent now. That's not what the precedent used to be, but that's what the precedent is now. This is just a word of advice to anyone else who's planning on making Patreon videos. Do not use the Patreon logo or watermark in your thumbnail. Patreon has very stupidly strict rules on how you can use their logos. That's why the Patreon logo and watermark is not anywhere in the thumbnail for this video. Because if you go on to Patreon's branding section on their website, it's freaking long. And they have the legal right to strike down your video if you use their logo in a way that they deem inappropriate to their brand. So, you can argue about fair use all you want, but in the end, they're a frickin' Mega Millions company, and any court that's gonna rule in favor of you, a YouTuber, against a multi-million-dollar corporation is stupid. So just don't use the logo in your thumbnail. Don't use the watermark in your thumbnail. Don't use anything Patreon related at all in your thumbnail. They don't like you using the old logo either, so don't think you can use the old logo and get away with it. They hate the old logo. They disavow the old logo. Like, literally, you go onto the branding website, there's the old logo, it's just got a big X through it. Don't use the old logo. So, there's arguably a lot more discussion that needs to be done about this topic in the future, but for now, my opinion is that both Patreon and YouTube need to take a step back. Look at their decision-making process for determining what they do not like on their platform. And look at how it actually affects real people who depend on their platform for their livelihood. I'm going to be honest, I've never seen any career paths that are as unstable as being a YouTuber, because at any moment YouTube could just decide to pull that plug on your channel for no good reason. You try to appeal, they can just deny the appeal. Do you want to help stop the unfair banning of creators from YouTube? It's simple. Just use Bing.